Every major professional scientific society that has a discipline connected to the sciences that contribute to the analysis of the climate crisis all agree. Now, I was listening to these scientists here today. I hear from some quarters that the scientists who are presenting this evidence to us are interested in making money, and that they are making stuff up and hyping it in order to get research grants. It is an insult. You listen to these men and women on this that were on this stage today, or you talk to the members of these societies. They don't make that much money, to tell you the truth, and they have hard jobs, and they dedicate themselves to it. And those in the IPCC, they do that all on a volunteer basis on top of the work they do. And our country was based in large part on the respect for the rule of reason and reasoned discourse, and the idea that yes, we can disagree, but after a fact-based dialogue where the best evidence is sought and tested and discussed, then at some point the rule of reason applies. If reasonable people cannot but agree based on the best evidence thoroughly tested, then that's how we make decisions. And the United States of America was born of the Enlightenment. And you read the Constitution and it's so crystal clear that you know, the old monarchies of the old world were overthrown and the new sovereign put in their place was the rule of reason. And when these scientists are virtually unanimous worldwide, 98% of climatologists agree with this consensus. And a lot of them are practically screaming from the rooftops now, trying to get the attention of the rest of us to say this is unprecedented and we have to act. So do we trust the scientists or not? Now, there are people out there, as I've said, who are putting out a kind of a subtle message that does get through. I'm not picking on this particular news organization, but I want you, now, this is a scientific study done by Stanford University, a sample of 1,001 people selected according to the statistically correct process nationwide. There are a whole raft of these findings, but that is startling. And that extra 32% that's missing really makes the difference between whether our political process in America, whether our democracy in America is capable of acting on the basis of reason-based thinking and discussion and discourse and debate, or whether or not we are paralyzed if powerful interests find that facts are inconvenient and have preferential access to megaphones that tempt them to the same abuse of power that our founders recognized as the core of the balance of powers and the separation of powers and checks and balances in the Constitution. What our founders believed was, it doesn't matter a hoot what political party somebody is in, what ideology they have, where they come from, what their character is. It does not matter. If they acquire too much power, any human being is vulnerable to the temptation to exploit that power. And if that power tempts them to ignore facts and try to overcome reason by simply hollering louder or repeating it more often and just pushing the facts aside, then that temptation is part of human nature. And we've always guarded against that, and we need to today. Now, let me go to the second one. Drought stress weakens trees. And it too is, of course, related to the increasing... Now, I'm going to show you two versions of this. This one centers on North America, and then I'm going to show you the global map. But I want to invite your attention to the color code at the bottom of this picture. Look at the three colors on the far left. those are the most extreme dry conditions, the most serious drought potential. And we're going to skip through quite a few decades here, but look at Colorado here. So, to the extent that drought is a problem for the forest today, the scientific projections are that the continued accumulation of this global warming pollution and the higher temperatures that result will significantly and steadily and dramatically worsen that drought in the years to come. By the way, take a look at Mexico. Well, get ready for a heated up immigration debate. Look at Venezuela, and that goes down into the Amazon. Now, I want to show you this on a worldwide basis, and I want to invite you to look at the Mediterranean basin just for a moment. In his excellent presentation, Craig Allen talked about the tree deaths in the southern arc of Europe along the Mediterranean basin. Just look at what happens to what we as heirs to Western civilization call the cradle of civilization. What happens to Spain, France, Italy, the Balkans, Turkey? Now, there are reasons for this, and this is extremely well understood. I spent an hour on the phone with the researcher that was the lead scientist on this, and he did his best to get me to understand it. But this is not speculative stuff. And by the way, the drought in northern China today is reaching record proportions and is also contributing to that food price crisis that I mentioned just a moment ago. The Amazon River. The Amazon River is formed by the confluence of the Rio Negro and the Rio Salome just outside the city of Manaus. This is the Rio Negro a few months ago, and the drying of the significant parts of the Amazon is a big part of the tree story globally. Now, drought is connected also to flooding, and this is an old slide. This is one of the only slides that I've used before that's in this show. But the point that it makes is the warmer temperatures pull moisture out of the soil. The leverage of higher temperatures over the evaporation of soil moisture is very high. The warmer oceans evaporate into the atmosphere. Technically, the warmer air holds more water, but here's the point. The entire hydrological cycle is being disrupted. And so at the same time we get these additional droughts and deeper droughts, we have much larger downpours. Both the phrase thunder snow was used earlier, a new word. This is a beautiful panoramic photo from the plains in Montana of a thunderstorm which illustrates a point. The rain that's falling from that thunderhead comprises water that does not originate simply in the area of the sky directly overhead. Because the way these storms operate, and there are scientific terms for this that are above my pay grade, but these storms reach out as much as 2,000 kilometers. Now here's the fact. In addition to having higher temperatures, we now have 4% more water vapor in the Earth's atmosphere today than we did 30 years ago. And that 4% is more significant where its impact on these downpours is concerned, because it's 4% not just of that small area directly above the rainstorm. It's 4% more water vapor in that huge circumference from which these storms draw moisture. these scientists use the metaphor of a bathtub. If the drain is pulled in a bathtub, the water that drains out doesn't come from just above the drain. It comes from the entire tub. And there are sections of the sky where large amounts of moisture drain. And this is from the supercomputer at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the first computer model of water vapor in the atmosphere. That's not water, it's water vapor. And you can see, by the way, what the trees do in the Amazon. They pull it. It's like the, it rolls like a slinky through the Amazon, and it comes out here. This is the area of Brazil where they've been having those horrendous floods here recently. So the heavy precipitation events are increasing dramatically. And this too has a connection to the increased droughts, because the statistical distribution curve means that if a higher percentage of it comes in these one-time large downpours, and the evidence is everywhere worldwide. I could show you 100 more slides just on this principle here and how it's happening. When more of it falls in these big downpours, like the big snowfalls in the Northeast, for example, consistent with that phenomenon, then the distribution curve means there's a longer period of time between significant rainfalls, and that contributes to more drought. Now, this summer, another thing that happened in 2010 was the unprecedented flooding in Pakistan. 20 million people homeless in a nuclear-armed country. And the devastation was, of course, just horrendous. And the president of Pakistan called me and said, would you please pull together a group of scientists to try to help me understand how to talk to my people, because I believe it's global warming, he said. Well, it's very complicated. There are monsoons involved, but these heavy downpours are now connected to these events. And by the way, you have all heard, as I have on innumerable occasions, how the scientists will often say, you can't take a single extreme weather event and say that's caused by global warming. What you have to say is, statistically, the odds of such events are going up. Well, they've begun to change that. And some of them, Jim Hansen included, Kevin Trenberth, who does some of this extreme downpour work, they and others have shifted their rhetoric, and here's what they say now. Every event is affected now by global warming. Because when you have, for example, 4% more water vapor in the atmosphere, every event is affected by it. And if you turn the question around and ask, would this have happened in the absence of global warming, then the answer is probably not. And we're seeing these extreme events everywhere. My hometown, Nashville, Tennessee, home of the Grand Ole Opry. The Grand Ole Opry was shut down for most of all last year, for the majority of the year, because May 1st and May 2nd, we had an historic downpour that the Army Corps of Engineers said was a once-in-a-thousand-year rainfall. Thousands of my neighbors lost their homes and businesses and had no flood insurance because it had never flooded there. They lived so far outside of the historic flood zone, it was considered absurd to have flood insurance. So it's an unprecedented event in the same way that the die-off of these trees here in the American West is an unprecedented event. After Pearl Harbor, one of those study commissions, decades later, tried to figure out how we missed the warning signs. Did FDR mess up? No, that wasn't the answer. But they came up with some of the answers, and one of them caught my attention. They said, we human beings, have a tendency to confuse the unprecedented with the improbable. If something's never happened in the past, it's usually a good rule of thumb to assume it's not going to happen in the future. But the exceptions can kill you. So, just a couple miles from my house on Interstate 24, this school classroom building went floating down the interstate. Never had it happen before.